Good day, brothers and sisters. This series I'm going to go into now, I'm going to call Progressive Revelation. The Bible is 1/3 basically prophecy. So what you have in your Bible is almost 9,000 prophetic verses from Genesis to Revelation. So roughly 1/3 of that is prophecy, and they break it down into little snippets. The ones we're going to focus on is in Daniel chapter 9. That's where Daniel is praying, and he's asking God for an answer. He has read the scroll from Jeremiah, where Jeremiah, if you know that story, had prophesied back in chapter 25 that Israel was going to be there 70 years. If you know the story of Daniel, he went there sometime during his teenage year. Now he's getting there, he's in his 80s, and he's realizing, hey, we're near this time frame. So he's reading Jeremiah 25, and he realizes is getting near this 70-year mark. So there's 3 big praying chapters in the Bible, and the good thing is they're all 9s: Daniel 9, Ezra 9, Nehemiah 9. But this one here with Daniel, he starts out praying, God forgive us our sin and all of this stuff, and then somewhere around verse 21, Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, comes down, messenger angel, and he gives Daniel something that just blows his mind. So in Daniel 9, starting with verse 24 through the end of the chapter, you have 24 is the scope of the verse. Then you have the 69-week prophecy. 26 is the church age, or the age of the Gentiles. And then verse 26 of chapter 9 is that 70th week, which we know is the tribulation time. So those 4 verses in the Old Testament just summarize Israel's history. And in coming weeks we'll go more in depth as to why Israel is in that predicament and they owe God all this time. The next chapters, as far as end time prophecy and Revelation, is over in Mathew 24-25, and there is where you have a few of the disciples, and they're asking Jesus what's the sign of the end times and what's that's going to be. And over here again in the next coming weeks, Jesus is going to give them some signs of the end age, and he'll speak of the abomination of desolation, which is the midpoint. And he speaks and he tells this, and it's written to Jews as he tells them, if it's going to be on the Sabbath, you better pray this tribulation's not on the Sabbath, because they're not supposed to travel or do anything on the Sabbath. So this is where 24 and 25 is written for the Jewish nation, and they tell them to flee to the mountains, as the end is coming. And we'll talk about that when we get up to those 2 chapters regarding where they'll be running to Petra and stuff. And then Jesus will speak with the end times, the coming of the Son of Man. You'll read and hear the lesson of the fig tree. Jesus tells them no man knows the day or the hour, even though you've got denominations and men that sit there and insist upon putting an end time date. Jesus tells you here in the Word, no man, not even Jesus, while he was here on earth, knew of when that time was. And then when you get over to chapter 25 of Mathew. You'll read about all the end time parables. You'll be dealing with the parable of the 10 virgins, the parable of the talents. Then Jesus will speak in regards to the final judgment and what's supposed to happen there. Jesus, when you get over to Luke 21, you'll see what many sit there and try to compare and say they're basically the same thing, but what I'm going to show you is that Jesus is speaking to two different groups. Over here in Luke 21, Jesus is speaking to the Christians and the Gentiles. But Jesus over here in Luke 21, when they ask him about end times, he speaks and he foretells of the destruction of the temple, and not even one stone is going to lay on top of the other. And we know from history that this destruction of the temple took place in 70 AD when General Titus came in and just basically obliterated the Jews, scattered them everywhere, and they were scattered all the way until they reformed as a nation in May of 1948. And we will speak on that when we get up to the Luke section. And then the biggest part of prophecy that is mentioned in the Bible is the book of Revelation. And in Revelation you have all of the end time prophecies there. And what we started with in Daniel 9 verse 27, that 27 verse speaking of the 70th week, the time of Jacob's trouble, Daniel's 70th week, it's known by many names, is going to coincide here with Revelation chapters 6 through 19. You have in the book of Revelation, you have Jesus as his appearance of the high priest there in chapter 1. You see in chapters 2 and 3 are 7 epistles that, the Bible's basically 39 Old Testament, 27 New Testament. Well, there's 7 other epistles in Revelation 2 and 3 written by Jesus himself to the 7 churches during that early church age. And they are Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea. Those are the 7 churches. And if you do a study with those churches, you'll find out how the prophecies did not apply only to the church at that time, but as a whole with a church age, and to us personally, and to your local churches in this day and age. We are all sitting under one of these 7 church signs, and only you in your heart can answer as to which church you're living under. My prayer is all of y'all are living under the Philadelphia church like I am, and we're just not even going to go through tribulation. So that's my heart's desire for each and every one of you, but only you can answer that for yourself. But you'll see when the study 4 and 5 is up there in heaven, that's a whole different study there. We'll get going, and then starting there in verse 6:1, you start to see the wrath. You have the trumpet judgments, the seal judgments, followed by the trumpet, followed by the vials, and they accumulate in chapter 19 verse 11 with the second coming of Christ. So over the course of the next several things, we're going to go in detail all these different 3 points of Revelation, or 4 points I just spoke with you. Daniel 9, there at the end, Matthew 24:25, Luke 21, and Revelation 6 through 19. So we will pick it up next time. May God richly bless you. Bye-bye.